Hello, and welcome to the Art of Being Human. Today I'm going to talk to you about, and I'm going to use three terms interchangeably: coping mechanisms, defense mechanisms, and adjustment mechanisms. Those terms can be used interchangeably. They mean about the same thing. But what are they? So I'll give you a definition. We all use them. They are a characteristic way of facing the world. None of us faces the world head on without any kind of protection from the stress. Our bodies make sure of that. So these skills that we have, coping mechanisms, adjustment mechanisms, defense mechanisms, is our characteristic way of dealing with the world and the stresses of the world and how we handle stress in terms of our everyday life. Now, we use more than one. I want to say there are about 10 of them. It depends upon who you read, because some psychologists list 10, some list 11 or 12. So depending upon who you're reading, there would be maybe a few more or a few less. But basically, there's about 10 defense mechanisms. And we usually use one. But we don't always, we use more than one, but we use one more predominantly than the others, and then we use maybe 2 or 3 in addition to that to kind of supplement the one that we're using, so we don't limit it to just one, but we use several, but one becomes predominant in the way that we use it. So we become strong in our use of one particular one with others around it that help us out. So we have a way of looking at the world. What would happen, you stop to think, what would happen if there wasn't any barrier between us and the stress of being alive? If we had to face everything head on without any protection, I suppose it would be like a person going to battle without a shield. There wouldn't be anything to protect us from the stresses that we get into. Now, stress isn't always bad. We all have some stress in our life. So we have regular stress and we have eustress. Eustress is not a bad kind of stress, but we still have to handle it. You know, if I took it, I don't play the lottery, but what if I played the lottery and I won $400 million, which is what it is up to today. And supposing I won it, all $400 million. Now, you might say I'd be jumping up and down for joy, but the normal reaction would be so stressful that you can't even conceive of that much money. You can't even conceive of your having that much money. And even if you win part of the lottery, but not all of it, even $1 million presents a lot of stress. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to manage the finances? Are you going to have to move? What about all these people that suddenly become your friends and start asking you for money because they think you have a never-ending supply? Most people who win a lot of lottery money end up by losing most of it and ending up just as poor as they were before they won it, because they don't have the guidance or they don't have the wherewithal to set it up so they can use part of it. They usually just run through the money and that's it, they're poor again. And then they're usually discouraged. So it's just, you have to know how to handle stress, whether it's good stress or bad stress. You just have to learn how to handle it. So there are several of these mechanisms that you will use, one more than the other. And we don't choose which ones we use. I don't get up one morning and say, okay, I guess I'll use compensation as my defense mechanism. It doesn't work that way. What we tend to do is we kind of fall into it. Our brains do it for us. And these are lifelong adjustment mechanisms. The mechanisms that you grow into when you're young, you will probably be continuing to use them when you're old. They don't go away. They become part of your personality. And when people see you and they work with you and you are introduced to new people, part of the thing is you will learn how they act in stress, and you will get to learn what their defense mechanisms are. Although it may not be your purpose to do so, it'll kind of jump out at you at some point, and it becomes a part of the personality. So as you learn who a person is and you learn what their personality is, you learn what their defense mechanisms are too. And as I go through these lists, as I said, there are about 10 of them, and I will be going through them today, you will learn maybe to pinpoint which ones you use. But remember, you didn't sit down one day and choose. Your body chose for you. Your brain chose for you. It'll be lifelong. Everybody uses them. Nobody is exempt. Some of them are healthier than others. Some of them have healthy parts and unhealthy parts. But we all use them. And we probably use those that are unhealthy along with those that are healthy. And as you learn about people, as you learn to know them, as you learn to care for them, you learn that part of their personality is how they handle stressful relationships. Are they explosive? If something goes wrong, do they pound their fist on the table and kick the door? Or do they take it in stride? I know I've talked to you before about handling stress and what happens, you know, if you're frustrated and your frustration tolerance and what that means. I've done this in a few of the segments before today. So it all kind of ties in together, how you handle stress, what you can do with stress, and what your defense mechanisms are to protect you from stress. So let me read off what they are first, and then we're going to go into them one by one. Working harder can be a defense mechanism. Compensating. I'll have to define these terms when I actually get into them because you may not be familiar with the definitions of them. Compensation, rationalization, attention getting, identification, projection, repression, daydreaming, regression, and withdrawal. Those are basically what they are, and everybody uses them to a certain extent. There are about 10 of them, as I said before. They are the way that we face the world, and they protect us from looking at the world so directly that we have no protection against the stress that we have. Everybody uses them, and you don't make a conscious choice about it, but it's something that everybody does. So let me go through them one by one. Working harder, increased work and effort, we'll call that the same thing. What happens if you have stress? You work harder. There are some people who believe that the answer to all their stress is to become busier or harder working. I'll make the grade if I work harder, if I do more work, if I spend more time in the office, if I put my hand to the grindstone and just keep going and going and going. And it can become compulsive. You can become compulsive about your work. You have to work. You work more and more. Something hits you at home. Your child was caught using drugs or something. What do? You go back to work. You work harder and harder and harder. You put more hours in. And that's the way you feel. And what happens is that you're doing extra work will take your mind off your stress because your focus is on your work. Now, employers like this. They like to have people become compulsive about their work because they can always depend upon them, and they're always working. So you can give them more and more and more work. It's good for an employer, but it's not good for the person who has this mechanism. There's nothing wrong with it inherently. It can be helpful because it can take your mind off from what's bothering you, but then you see if you're a person that is healthy, you've got to go back and face that which is bothering you. If your child was caught with drugs, you've got to face that at some point. You can't put your head somewhere else and just continually work and be so focused on work that you never step in to help your child or to be confrontive with your child or to do what you need to do for your child. Why? Because your work now becomes an escape. You become compulsive about your work, and your work becomes an escape. And as long as you're on that escape, you do not have to face the issue that's bothering you. So it's healthy in terms of you do get a break from what the stress is. It's unhealthy because if it goes too far, you never end up by facing the problems that you need to face. So it has both a healthy and an unhealthy aspect. Work is not the cure-all for whatever is bothering you. It may seem like it. It may take you away from what you're doing, from the stressful thing that you're facing, but it isn't the answer to your problems. You have to face your problems, and this is a temporary escape for you, but then you need to get back, and you may need help in doing that. So this is work and effort. Not bad, but it can become problematic. Now, what I want to say about these defense mechanisms is that usually they have a good, healthy part. There are a couple of them that don't, but usually they have a good, healthy part. And as long as you use that and don't become so overburdened that you just stay there. In other words, you're using a defense mechanism. You don't want to stay there and get stuck there and never return to what you're supposed to face. They can be a temporary protection for you, but you still have to face the things that are bothering you. You still have to face your problems, and most of them allow you to do that. But if you focus on your work or focus on the defense mechanism so much, you lose contact with what you are, other aspects of your life that need your help. It actually can develop into a type of mental illness. So you can imagine how many divorces have been caused because people are so focused on their work that they have no time for their families anymore, and eventually their families drift away. That work and effort is part of the problem. That defense mechanism, which can be helpful, can also be destructive if taken too far. It can develop into mental illness if taken too far. Fortunately, most people use defense mechanisms without even knowing that they're doing it, and then they just handle life as it comes, and they're all right with it. But if it does go too far, then you could have a mental problem. Now, compensation is the next one. And what this means is this. If you can't be successful in one thing, you try another. This is, generally speaking, very healthy. If I wanted to be, say, a golfer, well, I wouldn't do very well. I just am not into sports that much. It's not that I don't like golf. I actually took 3 semesters of golf in college. But when you're thinking of a professional situation, you've got to be a lot better than I would ever become from courses in college. Or if I wanted to be a tennis star, forget that. I wouldn't be able to run fast enough. I wouldn't be able to hit the ball hard enough. So if I'm using a compensation as a defense mechanism, I say, I can't do this, and so therefore I'm going to turn my mind to something else. I'm going to become an artist, or I'm going to become a musician, and that I can be successful at. So you take an area that you can't do anything with, you can't do it well enough to be professional, and you just change into something that you can do, and in that light, it's very, very helpful. Now, some people decide that they are going to be good at whatever they want to be good at. They don't care how hard they try. They don't care how many failures they have. They are going to do it no matter what. And so they keep going back to do the same thing over and over again that they failed at. They failed at it once, let's try it again. They fail at it the second time, let's try it again. They fail at it, and they never reach the point where they realize they just can't do it. Not everybody can do everything. Far better for them to find something that they can do rather than something that they can't do and push and push and push, and they don't get success. That would be overcompensation. But overcompensation is not healthy. Compensation is healthy. I had a college friend of mine. She's a very nice girl. We, a group of us, all went to college pretty much together, and we were making progress, and we were headed toward getting our degrees, and she flunked out of college. So what did she do? She decided to be a college student again, so she was readmitted, same college. And we're all practically graduated now. She flunks out again. So what is she going to do? She goes back and gets readmitted a third time. She says, surely she can make it the third time. I just know I can do it now. I flunked twice, but this time I'm going to be a success. Now we're watching all of this, and we're trying to encourage her, knowing full well it may be disappointing for her in the end. Well, wouldn't you know, she flunks out again. 3 times she flunked out of college because she insisted she could do it. She wanted to do it. Why? Because all of her friends were doing it. We were all in college. We were all doing well in college. We were all headed for our degrees, all talking about going into a master's program or some kind of a graduate program, or starting our professional lives, one or the other. She's still trying not to flunk out of an undergraduate program, and she never did make it. Now, why the college kept readmitting her especially after she flunked out for the second time. I just don't get it. But they did, and she tried, and she continually flunked. She was still a good friend of ours. We still touched base with her. We still got together with her, but we encouraged her to do something else, you know? We really had to do that. So there's nothing shameful about finding out that you can't do something. There's nothing shameful about that. I can't do mathematics. I could never be a basketball player. I could never be a professional golfer. Now, I like some of those sports, but I would never be good enough to be professional. So what do I do? Something else that I can do. This is a very healthy choice to make, as long as it's something that you can do. And as long as it doesn't demean you. If you find out you can't do something, so you do something else instead, that should build up your personality, that you could find that out and find what you can do. It shouldn't be demeaning at all. One of my nieces, she told me when she got toward high school, she says, I'm going to be a brain surgeon or nothing. And I said, a brain surgeon or nothing? She says, yeah, I want to be a brain surgeon. If I can't be a brain surgeon, I'm not going to be anything. And so I talked to her. She was just a young high school kid. And I says, you know, there's a lot of things between brain surgeon and nothing. There's nursing. There's a physician's assistant. There's all kinds of things, because she was interested in going into the medical field. Well, she went to school, and she used to say, why does Auntie Pat take so many courses? Why is she in school so long? I don't see the sense of it. And then when she started learning and growing and coming into her own, she also started doing a lot of coursework, a lot of extra work. And she finally says, well, now I know why Auntie Pat did that, because I'm doing it too. She's brilliant. She turned out to be a physician's assistant. She's very happy in her job. She's working for herself, and she loves it. But she never got to be a brain surgeon, but she found the niche that was hers. I think we make a mistake in education when we try to get kids to focus on what they're going to be when they grow up. Because what they're going to be when they grow up is probably going to be completely different than what they envisioned as a child. We need to let them grow and take many courses and sample many disciplines, and then they can choose one that they're most interested in, that they like the best, that they're a success at, and it'll be different than what they ever thought it would be like a child. So do not force the issue of what are you going to be when you grow up. Let a child grow and develop, and it'll fall in place for them. So there has to be a knowledge of who you are. What's best for you is not best for somebody else, and so therefore you have to choose a career that's best for you. Now, I think what I'm going to do, we have quite a few more to go, and we're almost out of time. So I think what I'm going to do, if I start this next one, what's going to happen is I'm going to run out of time before I finish it. So I'll close it here. We will continue with this until we are done with all the 10. And you can be thinking, if you want to, in terms of where you fit. How do you face reality? How do you face life? How do you make choices in terms of what your stress level is going to be and what you're going to do for a career and how you're going to change your career? Because when you get to midlife, you may well decide for a completely different career. There is that midlife change that many people have. So I'm going to close it here. We'll continue with this next time. Please join me then.